How's it going? Oh, hold on. Hit that out. How's it going? And welcome to episode 216 of On the Wire, proud member of the Pitcher List Podcast Network. I am Adam Howe, joined as always. Well, not always, because last week it didn't turn out this way. With Kevin Hasting, of course. Thank you all for listening and watching. We got a great show lined up for you. Lots to talk about. And luckily for me, I have somebody to talk about it with. Kevin, welcome back. Thank you so much for being in the other chair. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Adam. Thank you so much. It's great to be back. And yes, I listened to last week's episode. Amazing. It's hard doing a solo show. 45 minutes solo nonstop talking is tough to do. You nailed it. And I'm just happy for you that there wasn't as much news last week as there
I
is
know,
this
right?
week, or that would have been a 2-hour solo pod last week.
Yes, if I had as much news last week as we're about to talk about, yeah, I wouldn't have a voice still today. But yeah, we got lots to talk about. We'll get into it in just a second. Yeah, it was just Memorial Day weekend. I reached out to a few people. I get it. It was hard to grab anybody to take away from the weekend, and that's fine. Hopefully everybody out there still had a good time, not only for the holiday, but also on your FAAB bids, because there were some interesting bids last week. Felt pretty good about what PL Bot was able to help me deliver, especially the Clemens one. Cody Clemens hit a home run like on day 2 of the week as well. So that one returned some value right away. So hopefully, and somebody besides myself was able to grab him and put them in their lineup. And I did definitely, I walked the walk with all of those recommendations last week. I was able to grab most of them in a variety of my leagues. So you got a direct insight into at least what I was doing that week. But we can cut all the rest of the chit chat. Let's stop living in the past, Kevin. And let's talk about more recent past. And that is all the news that has happened over the last week that might dictate how you are considering spending your FAAB dollars on the 11th FAAB period of the 2025 season. And we're basically going to start off. Let's go further back. Let's try to go in chronological order as much as I can. So I'm going to go all the way back to the beginning of the week. Michael King hit the IL with a scapula injury. He just slept on it weird. And that's unfortunate, where you can just sleep on your side weird and you hit the IL. So Michael King, I'm expecting, hopefully everything's fine. By the time he comes back, it's a minimum stay. He just needs to rest it off. But what does this look like how is this affecting the San Diego rotation in general, with King missing at least one time through the order?
Well, if we're buying into what Jason has over at Roster Resource, he's got Stephen Kolek and then Kyle Hart being, we have seen we have seen Kolek and now Kyle Hart getting back as well. That we saw him earlier in the year, but I think this is how they're going to try to get by. Now San Diego does have a 7-game week coming up, and they look to go on Monday and Tuesday. There is not much available, especially in 15-teamers. In 15-teamers, I don't think there's a starting pitcher out there with availability at all that I'm interested in their matchups this coming week. I think this is a week that I am really going to dive into our ratios category, the relievers we talk about, and that's where I'm going to be looking if I need some pitching depth on my rosters in 15-teamers and maybe even some 12s. But the Kolek and Hart for San Diego, both getting a 2-step at San Francisco, been hitting well, but we love that ballpark for pitchers. So sure. I'd be okay with that. At Milwaukee, who's been kind of an up and down offense. So I may have interest there in 15-teamers just because there's not anything better out there.
Kolek obviously not doing all that great in his most recent outing. I'm pretty sure he was one. If you're in the PL Discord, Great conversation always happening in there, where there was one of those comments where Kolek was just a very common ad in Yahoo. It was like over 10,000. It shows you exactly how many ads in the day. Over 10,000 leagues in Yahoo picked him up for that spot start. Did not turn out the way they expected based on his previous start. But the two-step, nothing to shy away from in and of itself. Hopefully they can take advantage of those matchups. As you said, there's not a whole lot to, choose from. Well, one less player to choose from is back in Milwaukee. Logan Henderson, who had an amazing start to his MLB career, is no longer pitching in the major leagues as he was sent down by the Brewers in lieu of DL Hall being reinstated from the IL. This camp. I'm assuming this is not a 1-for-1. DL Hall is not being thrust into the rotation for the Brewers. But what kind of a hole does Logan Henderson leave, and who's filling it in that rotation?
Yeah, this is because they're going to get Quintana back, I believe. So we'll see Quintana first, and then we're probably going to see another demotion in Milwaukee. It sounds like this one more rehab start for Brandon Woodruff. Mm-hmm. Now, we've been down this road before.
Sure.
We were to
it's
that
always
point.
One more. It's always one
different
more.
Injury, yep. Right? He hurt the ankle, but now we're ready to go again. So, yeah, this is going to be Quintana here this week, and then hopefully Brandon Woodruff the following week.
Yeah, the Woodruff one is always interesting just because I feel like it's always one more rehab. And hopefully we all want to see him back in action and like to see exactly what he can do for the Brewers rotation. Going over to Pittsburgh, they welcome back catcher and first baseman and DH Endy Rodriguez. And for them, this is a 1-for-1 trade. This is at the expense of Joey Bart hitting the IL, the 7-day concussion IL. So what kind of, Endy Rodriguez, does he just fill in exactly where Joey Bart was leaving? And if this is only a 7-day stay for Joey Bart, how does that roster look like it may iron itself out when Bart returns?
Yeah, it probably means it's going to be a tough call for Pittsburgh because Henry Davis is finally starting to hit a little bit. It seems like we've been waiting on Henry Davis to break out for 12 years now. It's been 2 or 3, but
Sure.
It hasn't been as long as it seems like. And it does seem like he might be finally clicking a little bit. My take for this coming week is that Henry Davis will get more of the share of starts at catcher. I don't think that Endy Rodriguez is going to get half the starts like Bart. Bart and Davis for the last couple of weeks have been splitting about half and half. So I think Henry Davis is a nice play for this coming week as far as playing time goes. Pittsburgh does have some pretty tough pitching matchups, but Henry Davis, I think, will get more playing time this week. And then when Bart is ready to return, since this is an IL stint Endy Rodriguez is coming back from, I'm not so sure which one will be out here. What do you have a thought on that, Adam? Because this is Endy Rodriguez coming back from injury. Henry Davis is finally starting to show signs. So is Bart going to lose his spot?
I don't know if any of them lose their spot per se, but yeah, you're right. It's like the Endy Rodriguez is not getting called up, right? This is like he was on the roster, he was hurt, and now he's back on the roster as if nothing happened.
Good timing with the Bart injury.
That is coincidental, if nothing else.
Yeah.
But because Davis has had his experience in the outfield, Endy was playing first base mostly before being hurt, if I'm not mistaken, as well. And then Joey Bart, they all obviously are catchers, and they can all fill in that spot and rotate. You don't normally have to have 3 catchers on your roster per se, but because the Pirates have gone out of their way to move these guys around and put them in different positions, I don't necessarily think that any one of them has to go. But that will obviously come at the expense of somebody else.
Good question by Keith here in the chat. Should he drop Merrill Kelly for Brandon Woodruff? Brandon Woodruff's injury is complicated. I remember in the offseason looking at some things, and I don't know that we've ever seen somebody come back all the way back from what he's dealing with. However, at the same time, he was so good, he doesn't have to be all the way back. So I do have a couple of shares I've been stashing all season. I think I would make that move if I were you, Keith. I think it's worth the risk. And Merrill Kelly or someone like him, you can acquire 2 or 3 weeks from now if it doesn't work, if it's not working for Woodruff. I think I'd take that shot.
Sure. Especially in like a 12-teamer, like obviously you're looking for something with a little bit more risk, and you're fine with that. 15-teamer, still worth the risk because Kelly's not exactly helping you in most scenarios anyway. All right, going to Tampa Bay here, kind of mixing and matching some things here. We'll just put it all together. The worst. All right, fine. This is more recent. This just happened just today. Jake Mangum returned to Tampa Bay from the IL, and this one's at the expense of recent call-up Chandler Simpson. He got the boot to AAA to make room. Chandler Simpson, of course, with the fastest man in baseball, as the nickname has already stuck. 19 stolen bases in his short period of time in Tampa. And so he gets the boot with Mangum coming up. The other piece of this hits a little bit. Kyle Gibson signs a deal with Tampa Bay after his release. And everybody that I'm seeing on the Twitter sphere is that it comes on the heels of Joe Boyle's 2-inning outing at AAA, where he had diminished velocity. They pulled him after 2 innings, and I can't find one thing on why, like no official word on exactly what it was, injury, non-injury, just, other people speculating that, well, they didn't want to hold him because Tampa Bay had like 10 straight games coming up. So maybe they call him up. But now with Kyle Gibson being signed on, makes you a little bit worried, at least those like me who have been stashing Joe Boyle around. So 2 very different signings or additions here for Tampa Bay. First and foremost, Chandler Simpson, big FAAB pickup a couple weeks ago, myself included, at least in one league. What do you do with Chandler Simpson from a fantasy perspective? And is his category winning speed worth the dead weight?
Probably not, because he was actively hurting your team in other categories. He really was. It was
for
bad.
batting average. Like,
yeah. There was nothing else there in the home run RBI categories. So it's, I think it's going to take an injury for him to come back, because several other players have returned. Christopher Morel is back as well, and he's getting playing time. Josh Lowe is back, and so if Chandler Simpson was going to play ahead of those guys, he would have been on the roster to start the season. So I think it takes an injury. I would drop him, unfortunately. Say thank you for those 19 stolen bases.
I mean, as long as you bank them, you're fine.
Some RBIs to catch up in RBIs now.
Yeah.
Yep.
I am absolutely in the league where I did win Chandler Simpson when he first came up. I am absolutely in first place in stolen bases, and I am dead last in home runs. So this is almost a blessing disguised as a curse. Because now
I saw somebody in the Discord post that they went from 10th to 1st in steals in their league in the time they picked him up, and they were about to drop him anyway. Like, thank you, you got me what I needed, but you're hurting me elsewhere.
Yes.
Yep. But this made that decision much easier for them, and I think a lot of people are probably in that boat. This is going to give them the nudge they needed.
Yeah, I mean, we're still in May, right? May's not over yet, so 19 stolen bases in 3 weeks worth of time is totally going, it's an easy jump in May,
Yep.
but you might need a little bit more to make that kind of a jump in August or September. But nice to kind of bank those and go about your way and try to win other categories. All right, but Kyle Gibson to Tampa Bay, what kind of role do you see Gibson, and how quickly does he make the actual rotation for Tampa?
Well, the intriguing thing here is it's Tampa,
Sure.
right? But they're pretty set right now. Pepio, Littell, Bradley, Rasmussen, and Shane Boss. So this is a depth move. I don't think we see Gibson unless we have an injury, and unfortunately, I think this is an insurance policy for depth for what you had stated about Joe Boyle, who I was hoping we might see soon. But hopefully he's okay, but it doesn't sound good.
Yeah, the worst part is that it doesn't sound like anything. Like I just need
Right.
I just need to hear something.
Let us know. Yeah. We're all making the same assumption though, and that makes it tough.
Yeah. I mean, if it wasn't for the diminished velocity, I probably would. I would assume it was they're saving him so that they can call him up in a couple days to do a spot start for this long this long stretch without a day off. But he was like 2 ticks down. It's not fun.
Yeah.
All right. Well, something more on the, I don't know, positive news. It's kind of neutral because with the positive news comes negative news. The San Francisco Giants have named an official closer, and is not Ryan Walker. It is Camilo Doval, who obviously had been their closer for some time prior to, losing the job in 2024. He came down, he went down, fixed what he needed to fix, came back at the end of 2024, looked much better. He's looked much better this year, much better than Ryan Walker, and hence taking the job back. And you get the sense that the Giants wanted Doval to take this job back the whole time. And finally, it get to a point where they could make this official. Does Doval hold this job the rest of the way?
I think so.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if people realize how good Doval has been since he gave up 2 runs on April 7th, almost 2 months ago. He has not given up a run in 18 innings pitched. 2 wins, 3 saves in that time. Yes, most of those saves were back in April. Right now, he's going to get the save opportunities again. He's just been phenomenal. A strikeout an inning, and no runs. As we said, I think the Doval that people benefited from over the past couple of seasons until towards the end of last year, I think he's back for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I tend to agree for all those points, and the underlying the narrative that I pointed out as well. I think the Giants wanted him in this role anyway. So he's already got
the one thing we know, he's going to give up runs at some point, right? So saying there's regression coming is yeah, absolutely Captain Obvious here, but a 108 BABIP over that time
that's totally
period,
sustainable,
right? Yeah, so we do know there will be runs given up, there will be hiccups, but Doval's been amazing for almost 2 months.
Mm-hmm. All right, we got another returnee, and of course the player himself is not of interest, but the impact on the rest of the lineup may be, and that is Corey Seager returning to the Texas Rangers lineup. Started on Wednesday at the DH spot, but got right back on the horse at shortstop today on Friday, at the expense of Josh Smith, who has been filling in that position at the top of the order for Seager for ever since, and actually even before that, when he just fills in it pretty much anywhere. So it's only been 2 days, but obviously Seager is back at the shortstop position probably every day for the Rangers. What does this mean for Josh Smith? And it should be it should be noted, of course, they faced a lefty today. Josh Smith usually does sit against lefties anyway, where he has mostly over the course of the last couple of weeks. Any other implications with Seager coming back into the lineup here that you're noticing?
Like you said, it's tough with there being that lefty on Friday, and so we've only seen the two games, and the first one versus a righty, they eased Corey Seager in that DH spot. It's tough, but I think Josh Smith is going to take a hit here. He'll still get his starts, but I don't know if he'll get in there versus every right-handed starting pitcher, unfortunately, because Josh Smith wasn't really spectacular, but he
No.
he was a boost to my 15 team leagues where I was able to pick him up. So yeah, Josh Smith I think is the one that's going to take a hit. I think they'll get him in there versus most righties because he can move all over the infield, but obviously there's somebody's got to lose some playing time here.
Sure. And the other move for Texas that I'm just throwing on here now, Kevin, is Alejandro Osuna was called up, one of their top outfield prospects for the Rangers. I'm only making a note of this, one, because if Jeff Bassan tells me that something's happening, it's something I'm going to take note of. And that's how I learned about it. And he's played 4 of the 5 games that he's been eligible for in the heart of the lineup, batting 6th, 7th, and 5th, respectively. Did sit against the lefty today, but are we interested in Osuna? Or like the Rangers have had a lot of rotations, especially in their outfield throughout the course of the season so far. Dustin Harris being the one that comes to mind originally. Leody Taveras obviously sent off to Seattle. So they've had some kind of mixing and matching in the outfield there, at least in that one spot. Can Osuna stick in this spot, or do you think this is a short stint that we're going to see him in the Rangers outfield?
I think he can stick, but he has to perform. Remember, Leody Taveras beat Evan Carter out for this starting position to start the season. Finally, Evan Carter was doing enough in the minors, and Leody Taveras, after a pretty nice start, had cooled off quite a bit, and we saw that change made. Now, Evan Carter goes on the IL. That's why we're seeing Osuna get this opportunity, and he will sit versus lefties, I believe. Fortunately, they only face one this upcoming week. So I think Osuna is a great add for at least this 1 week. And I think this is one of those situations where it's up to him. If he performs, he might keep this role. If he doesn't, when Evan Carter is ready to return, we probably see Osuna sent back down.
Yeah, I mean, if they can keep him in the 5 spot rather than the 7 spot, that's going to make a decent difference, at least giving him the opportunity.
Yep.
All right. We alluded to it. We said it outright at the beginning of the show. There's a lot of news to talk about. And so we're going to get to a lot more right after this break. All right. As I try to catch myself up as I'm moving this outline around as we go, Kevin, I think I found it. We're going to go up to Detroit here, where Wenzel Perez was back from the IL, and it's at the expense of Matt Vierling, who I just talked about last week as returning or making his debut this season, coming off the IL. And he's gone as quickly as he returned, hitting the IL with shoulder inflammation. I mean, hopefully nobody bid on Vierling, or at least was relying on him last week. If you did, though, you're just cutting bait and you're just, dropping them for anything else? Or do you think this is going to be something that's like a minimum and you're still excited about Vierling?
I like Vierling, but I don't think, I think there's a lot of people that like Vierling, but I don't think he's the type of guy that commands huge bids. So if you need the spot, let him go. You can probably get him back. That's how I feel about Vierling here. The interesting thing to me is, a couple weeks ago, we were in awe of what Javier Baez was doing, and that has dried up
That's all
really
gone.
quickly, starting to look a whole lot like 2023 and 2024 Javier Baez. And he was playing center field. That's where Perez has been all 3 games since returning. And we've seen Javier Baez on the bench for 2 of those 3 games. So it's probably okay to you're at least benching Javi Baez, I think,
Sure.
this coming week, unless something crazy happens over the weekend. We may be even dropping him. That might have been our run. And kind of like with
It's
Simpson,
Simpson.
thank you so much, Javi. But we'll see you later.
Thanks for all the fish.
Yep.
All right. Well, another one he's gone as quickly as he arrived. Jordan Lawler, he had his chance after everybody clamoring for him. You talked about him like every single week. He finally gets a call up, and now he's sent right back down to AAA. What does a man have to do to stick in the Arizona infield or on the roster in general? And I mean, do we just see him? Do we see him again soon, or are we just stuck in purgatory with Jordan Lawler?
Man, I think we're stuck for a while. And I don't think he ever did play shortstop.
Yeah.
I think Perdomo still played shortstop the entire time that Lawler was up. Yeah, he only played. Oh, he did. He had 1 start at shortstop.
His
His
first start.
first start was at shortstop, but then he spot starts at second base. Ketel Marte was out for a couple of games, and then he was giving him a breather here and there, and the 1 start at third base. But I think we just have to accept the fact that Arizona likes Geraldo Perdomo. So it might be a while before we see Lawler again, unfortunately.
I mean, they paid the man, so
Yep.
you knew that they liked him at least,
And they
whether or not.
told us that didn't mean anything.
Yeah,
But I think what it does mean is that they like him.
yeah.
The combination of defense and just enough offense that they want Perdomo out there.
All right, back to a bullpen here with the Cincinnati Reds. The big news, or the big thing that came through that everybody was watching, and some were excited about, some were questioning, was Alexis Diaz, who was already in the minors, gets traded to the Los Angeles Dodgers for minor league pitcher Mike Vianney, who was just drafted last year in 2024. But the one that caught my eye even more so, unrelated, was that the Cincinnati Reds optioned Luis May, who a lot of people were dubbing as the closer of the future, and he still could be. But I kind of poo-pooed that a little bit, just not thinking that was a type of player that Francona was going to want to put at the end of games, though his stuff is absolutely nasty. But he is no longer an option at all. I'm going to ask you the low-hanging fruit question. Do we care that Alexis Diaz is in Dodger blue?
No, I think
No.
but it muddies things up there, maybe, because maybe they've seen something like this is the adjustment you need to make. And then if that's the case, Tanner Scott has been kind of up and down. I think his underlying numbers are still really good. The results haven't been so great in a couple of outings. And Kirby Yates and Michael Kopech's coming back soon. And so it just muddies things up a lot more in LA. Tanner Scott still getting the bulk of the opportunities, but it could muddy it up a little more if they do indeed have a little tweak for Alexis Diaz.
Yeah. Should note Evan Phillips not in the equation anymore. He will be out for the foreseeable future. I believe that was Tommy John that he's slated to get as well. I don't have it in front of me. I just remember seeing that he was going to be out for a long time. Still, I mean, Dodgers are going to Dodger. There's always going to be an option. I mean, Vesia in that bullpen has been one of the most, dominant arms in general, and they're with Tanner Scott's up and downness, as you alluded to, they're using him in weird spots. He's not an only 9th inning guy, even though at the beginning of the season, Dave Roberts said Tanner Scott is going to be our 9th inning guy, or at least be getting a vast majority of those opportunities. Bringing him into the 7th inning is not that. So, no matter how good you are, Dodgers are still going to Dodger. All right, going over to the White Sox, I talked about a couple of demotions that the White Sox made at first base last week, including, of course, Andrew Vaughn being sent down. But now the guy who has been playing first base in their absence, Miguel Castro, is out for the season with a knee injury to his right knee. Who is playing first base for the White Sox now that their third option is no longer an option?
Well, now that he has been hitting, which is great, and hitting in the 3 spot in the order, Miguel Vargas has moved across the diamond. That's given Josh Rojas some playing time. So if you're looking for bags, Josh Rojas is the third baseman for the time being in Chicago. And Miguel Vargas, I think, is finally rostered almost everywhere, but it took a little while. So double check your leagues because he may be breaking out. It's been a prolonged month. The entire month of May he's been great, and up to the 3 spot in the order, and with Benintendi back and Mike Tauchman in front of him who's walking over 20% of the time, they're the top half of the White Sox lineup might score a few runs. So I like Miguel Vargas a lot here, but he's pretty much been picked up everywhere. Worth checking though.
Yeah. So go from Vaughn to Elko, and then to Miguel's. We'll see how many other first basemen. Hopefully there's not like a first base curse. Knock on wood. That's the last thing I want to see in Chicago. But it's just all of this happening all at once for the White Sox at first base. All right, so let's go across the country here to Anaheim, where the long-awaited return of Mike Trout on Friday. With that comes the option of Matthew Lugo. The Angels also earlier in the week signed Chris Taylor, and they sent down early season phenom Kyron Paris. Overall implications of Trout finally being back in the lineup for the Angels, along with what is Chris Taylor doing with the Angels?
I really think he was holding that spot until Trout did get back. He is not in the lineup on Friday. The Angels also called up Scott Kingery, who's had a couple of nice seasons in the minors. Casey Bubba's talked about it quite a bit, and was in the off season for a late draft and hold pick, Scott Kingery. He may get some run here as well. So I don't think Chris Taylor's going to be around for long now that Trout is back and they called up Scott Kingery.
Yeah, I mean, not off the roster yet. Still on the roster, but that could also be Young Moncada was held out of the lineup.
I was going to say if Moncada misses a time, that could keep Chris Taylor here for a while.
Yeah, man. It should be noted, Trout was in the lineup starting 5th, but at the DH position. How long until you think he actually gets back into the corner outfield?
I don't think it'll be, well, obviously it depends on his health, but if he's able to, I don't think they'll ease him in as slowly as they might want to, because they don't want Jorge Soler out there either.
Yes, that was that's the variable that you have to consider. Jorge Soler's been nothing but DH until Trout came back. So we'll see how long that lasts. All right, Miami expected / is making a whole bunch of moves this weekend.
Yeah.
And just, I'm sure I'll miss one. You can throw it out there, but Matt Mervis, Ronnie Simon expected to be DFA'd by the Miami Marlins. You know what? I'm going to say this. The timing of the announcements of both this one and then Mike Trout expected to come back came at the best possible time. I think they came at like on Thursday night or like Friday morning, while we still had opportunities to change and Simpsons call down too. All 3 of these hit me in multiple leagues where it's great to be able to, and in the NFBC, you can just search by players and then it'll tell you what leagues you have them in and what position you currently have them in your lineup. So you can very easily be like, get out of my lineup,
That's
get out
so
of my
great.
lineup, get back in my lineup. And so Simpson's on my bench everywhere. Mervis is on my bench everywhere, soon to be dropped. And Trout in the one place I got him, at least I threw him back into my outfield where he's still eligible. Anyway, Mervis, Simon, DFA by Miami. They calling up Herberto Hernandez, outfielder, and then Jack Winkler, who can play all around the infield for the Marlins. The other piece of interesting information here is that Xavier Edwards is on his way back. In his rehab assignment, he is playing second base with the intention he will be playing second base when he makes his way back to Miami, keeping Otto Lopez as the everyday shortstop for the Marlins. So a lot there to unpack. Tell me what's the most interesting thing about all of that, if there's anything.
No, the Xavier Edwards playing second base, it is very intriguing. They're happy with what they're getting from Otto Lopez at shortstop. I think that's the biggest thing. And they also got Dane Myers back here on Friday, right back into center field. I have him in the speed category for later in the show. We'll talk a little more about how impressive he was earlier in the season before he hit the IL, but he is also now back. So I think the Victor Mesa Jr., I think that was a short stint. I don't know if he'll be around much longer either. It's interesting. Hernandez in the lineup on Friday, Jack Winkler not. They are facing a lefty. Jesus Sanchez is sitting versus a lefty, but he will be in there most days, definitely versus righties. So there's a lot here and probably a couple of other moves coming.
Yeah, this seems like something, and we're also entering June. Let's all keep in mind as well. With June comes the mystical, magical Super 2 deadline that nobody knows exactly when it is, but you always know it's sometime in June. So we start seeing some added call-ups in mid to late June as well to start shaking things up, especially in certain situations. One that, we don't have it anywhere on this, but everybody's clamoring for your boy Jack, and I'm not going to say his last name right. Caglione, am I saying that right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Caglione.
All right.
Cags. So, that's the easy way.
That's the way that's going to be. Those are the types of ads that I think we're going to be starting to expect to see come mid to late June as well. I'm sure the Marlins will be happy to oblige and keep the Super 2 deadline active as well.
Yeah, and Miami is one of the teams we expect to see active at the trade deadline, and that being June means we're less than 2 months away, so they start maneuvering for those types of moves as well.
Sure. Going up to Toronto, man, this guy. I only have Anthony Santander in one spot, and luckily it's a league that has IL spots, so I've held him all season. But man, it's like I never know when he's actually going to be off the IL. All of a sudden, it's like, oh, by the way, Anthony Santander is back. Oh, cool. Oh yeah, by the way, Anthony Santander is going back on the IL. And I feel like that's happened like 5 times this season already. But he's back in the IL again with a left shoulder injury. Also, maybe of note, Bo Bichette was held out of Friday's lineup, and he's considered day-to-day as well. So we'll see if that lingers. But what is Toronto doing to kind of fill in the on again, off again relationship Santander has with the IL?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, and it's kind of tough because, like we've brought up with a couple of other of these situations earlier, for the past two nights, Toronto's faced at a lefty, so Miles Straw has been in the outfield. They don't want him in the outfield very often at all versus righties. So, I really am not sure exactly what Toronto is going to do. We could see Addison Barger move out to the outfield. Maybe more playing time for Nathan Lukes, who has shown some signs of it's been kind of up and down, but had some decent stretches in his sporadic playing time so far. I think if I wanted to speculate, I I would be in the camp that Nathan Lukes will now play versus all righties instead of just most, and we may see him sit versus lefties. But I think that's the shot I would take in this
Mhm.
situation is probably Nathan Lukes. But it's tough. I want to watch this over the weekend if we see Toronto face some right-handed pitching.
Fair enough. Speaking of pitching, we're out a couple of pitchers here. I'll jump right to AJ Smith-Shawver, has a torn UCL. Last I saw, he is not officially going to have Tommy John because they're considering whether or not he's going to have the brace procedure or full TJ. Regardless, you do not have to be rostering AJ Smith-Shawver at all the rest of the season. And then going up to Detroit, we saw Jackson Jobe get not look good, right, on his last outing.
Mm,
Had to assume it was injury related, and if it wasn't, then maybe he was fine. He would be fine in the next outing. It was injury related. He hits the IL with a flexor strain, so obviously out for at least 2 rounds of the rotation here. What's Detroit's plan here to kind of fill that spot in their rotation with Job out?
yeah, everybody's talking about Sawyer Gibson Long, right? And that may be what we see. However, he won't be available to us in NFBC formats
Right,
this weekend. And by next weekend, we get Reese Olson back. So I think this is a one-time thing, even if it's what we see. We could see Detroit do what they did all last postseason. Any game that Scooble wasn't starting, right? We could see the bullpen chaos that AJ Hinch talked about
sure.
on Tuesday. Everybody wants to see Gibson Long, but even if we do on Tuesday, we're expecting Reese Olson back next weekend. So I don't think there's much here.
Yeah. Gibson Long looked pretty good so far as rehab. We'll see if he gets
Yeah.
that extended look as he gets the call back up. But one of the deep league sleepers, if you will, that Nick Pollock's been pushing since pre-draft or pre-injury, if you will, in spring training. Another injury here, not pitching related, luckily. Still, you don't want any injuries regardless of position. Lane Thomas hits the IL with right foot fasciitis. And then I believe Cleveland was out another player throughout the course of the week as well, but I'm not sure if he returned. Any impact on Cleveland's lineup with at least with Thomas out for a while?
It's gonna give us a little more, and I don't think it'll be really strict, as strict of a platoons, I guess is what I'm looking at. Um, like I think we'll see a little more Mackenzie Noel. Typically we see him definitely versus lefties and once in a long while versus a righty. We might see him a little more often. Nolan Jones has been the beneficiary so far, I believe, getting uh, the last 2 games that the Cleveland has faced a righty. Nolan Jones has been out there. Um, but these guys have been getting some playing time anyway.
Right.
There's just going to be a little more and probably not as strict of platoons. Probably solidifies. I don't know if it needed solidified too much, but solidifies Angel Martinez's role in center field. So we can expect to see him on a daily basis if he's available out there. Probably solidifies his playing time and hitting in the 2 hole most days, especially versus righties.
Yeah. And I think what I was thinking of, Stephen Kwan, I believe, left earlier in the week, but obviously he's been fine.
That's what it was.
Yep.
Yes, I was trying to figure out what it was as well, and Quan is already completely removed from the roster resource page, so he must have hit the IL.
Oh man.
No, he's still at the top. He's still listed in the leadoff
Yeah.
spot. I'm sorry. I just looked right past him because I was looking at Martinez right below him.
Yeah, and then Carlos Santana was also missed a couple of days, but Kwan was the one I was thinking of.
Kwan is the one I was trying to think of as well, and I just couldn't see his name right in front of my face. But yeah, I think we'll see more Martinez, more Nolan Jones, more Big Christmas.
Yeah, and as Uncle Ted reminds us, Kwan was right back in. This was yesterday on Thursday that Kwan left early, but he was back leading off again on Friday, so he's good to go. Rockies, oh man, Rockies are gonna rock you. They're making a bunch of moves this week, or they made a bunch of moves this week. They did get your boy Thairo Estrada back from the 60-day IL. He gets back into the Rockies lineup. They also call up our boy, and I'm calling him our boy, even though neither one of us are rostering him anywhere. Sam Hilliard is back at the major league level for the Rockies. They also bring in Orlando Arcia, which nobody seems to understand. But it might have to do with the fact that they sent down Adel Amador down to AAA, and they DFA Nick Martini as well to make room for the others. With Arcia coming in to play shortstop, I'm assuming Thairo Estrada right back to second base. What's your expectations here with this new look infield for the Rockies?
I mean, I'm not so sure because the one game we've seen Arcia so far, he was the DH. I don't think he's going to take Tovar's spot. I don't think we'll see Arcia very often. I think he's a depth piece here and probably a depth piece behind Kyle Farmer that can play all over the infield as well. Estrada, fortunately, over the past couple of weeks, as this was getting closer, I have added him back to most of my teams where I had drafted him and dropped him. I'm worried though, because the reason I was so excited about him, if you remember, Adam, was I'm convinced he was playing through injury last season when he did not perform well between his IL stints. And this being a wrist injury, it just scares me that he might not be what I had hoped he will be for this season.
Right.
But I did add him back to most teams, and I'm hopeful. And I do think he will get the playing time in Colorado, or they wouldn't have sent Amador down.
Sure. I mean, he started at second base on his first day back in the cleanup spot for the Rockies. So, at least they trust that his wrist is fine. So we'll see how he continues to perform in the next couple of days over the weekend. All right. So last two things here. Oh man. Only two things left. I can't believe it. Mookie Betts, he missed Friday's game as he was waiting for x-ray results. He stubbed his toe on Wednesday, and they just want to be sure that it's all good to go. If Betts were to miss some time at shortstop, are the Dodgers ready to kind of fill in that? I know they've been moving Edmonds around a little bit. They've been moving some other players around to kind of accommodate that need for a decent center fielder, a decent second baseman. Mookie's been the only kind of mainstay in the middle of that, in the middle of the field at all. What are the Dodgers going to do at that position if Betts is to miss some time?
Yeah, I don't think he will, but I think it's worth looking at, and two options here in my mind. One, we see a nice sustained run from Miguel Rojas like we did last season when they faced a similar situation. The other would be we see a lot more Hyun-Sung Kim and Tommy Edmonds slides over to shortstop. So I think one of those two, it would be Rojas or Kim. I think they want to see Kim get more playing time. But once you've done something and it worked for you, like Miguel Rojas performed well for the Dodgers last season. Dave Roberts could easily feel very comfortable sliding him right back in that spot.
I guess I wonder even if the X-rays come back, is there a chance that they move Betts off a shortstop at all, just to like keep him in a position where the footwork isn't as necessary? Hey, you need your toes in any position, right? Except DH. And even then you're running the bases. But do we see Betts kind of move around a little bit more, maybe move back over to second base or back into the outfield? And I'm saying this not because I'm worried about him losing all that eligibility for next year. Not at all. That's definitely not my concern. But do you think Betts moves around at all because of this?
It would have to be pretty serious, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But that is possible. You can break a toe and there's absolutely nothing you can do for it except play through pain until it goes away.
Right.
And the more you do that, the longer it takes for it to go away. So yeah, that the scenario is a possibility. And in that case, I think they would want him DHing. I don't think they'd want him in the field at all if that's what comes to pass.
Yeah, I think they got somebody that has that position kind of covered.
Yeah, exactly. So
I don't think it's an option. All right, last thing, and I promise it is the last thing. I didn't see any news come about while we were going through our marathon of news items here, so that's good. Ryan Mountcastle did leave Friday's game with a right hamstring discomfort. Obviously no official ruling that I've seen, or he's going to hit the IL, but there's already so many reports of Mayo coming back up to Baltimore. Left his game early in AAA, got pulled, got in a car, drove up to Baltimore from Norfolk. I got to assume that this is the corresponding move. This will be a corresponding move tomorrow morning, where Mountcastle hits the IL and Mayo hits the active roster. It's nice for Mayo, especially somebody who's been performing. He's been obviously very vocal in the past about how he should be up due to his performance and due to his proximity and what have you. What's your overall take on Mayo? Is he going to be a decent bid for you this weekend?
Yeah, I think if we do see this move, it's tough, and I'm not somebody that splurges a lot in FAAB anyway. So, but I will definitely have my bids out there on Mayo. But I'm tempered even more than I typically am because of how we've seen all of these young guys over the past season and almost a half now in Baltimore, of them being up and down, and when they're up, they don't play.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't trust them. So I'm not spending a lot of money, but I do like Kobe Mayo.
Yeah. It'd be nice to see him maybe stick around a little bit longer than the rest, but Baltimore does not have a good recent track record with doing that. And even when they are up, whether or not they play or not, the hitting prospects specifically for the Orioles. All right, Kevin, we made it. We did it. We made it all the way through all these notes. And I'm sure there's plenty of other news items that actually happen. I tried to filter this out to ones that may have some FAAB implications. Go listen to First Pitch Podcast and the Plus Pitch Podcast for all of the other news we might have missed. They're on the daily here at the Pitcher List Podcast Network, and you can get them wherever you're listening to this podcast. But we're going to get into our actual player recommendations, and we're going to do that right after this break. All right, Kevin, we talked enough about news. We are going to get finally into these recommendations. And I am, we're recording this on Friday, as we've been doing. I don't have the luxury of utilizing the PL bot predictions or projections for the following week, because those come out on Saturdays. So shout out, though, to Kyle Bland and the team over at Pitcher List for putting those out on a regular basis. Definitely go use those. If you are a PL Pro member, you get a whole week's worth of projections, not only for DFS, there are daily projections as well, but also for your FAAB considerations. They take in all of the higher metrics, the PLV metrics, Process Plus, the park factors, the expected pitchers that they're going to be facing for hitters, et cetera, et cetera. So definitely a really good resource in tandem to what you guys are listening to right now. But Kevin, let's get into the power category of things that you like as you're looking around. And I love the availability of the guy you're going to bring up here, because he's available everywhere.
Yeah, both of them. The other one we already talked about a little bit, but he also is 0% rostered due to just arriving with the team. So we talked about Osuna in Texas. I think he's great for this coming week, and maybe more than that, depending on his performance, depending on what happens when Evan Carter is healthy and able to return. The other is a very similar situation, but I think we have at least a couple of weeks here. While Jesse Winker is out, we have Jared Young for the New York Mets. I need to watch this over the weekend, because it is a little concerning to me that on Thursday night he did not start versus a righty, but he had 4 straight. Now he is definitely not in the lineup on Friday versus a lefty. That I expected. So need to see him back in the lineup versus righties. The Mets have a 7-game week, 5 of them versus righties. The first half of the week isn't great because it's split 2-2. Now, if you think of that as, sure, they have a 7-game week, but there's only a handful of teams that do. There's like 8 of them this week, actually. So 2 starts in the first half of the week is not ideal, but 3 out of 3 righties for the weekend, and they're at Coors. So for that series. So Jared Young, I think, is a great add when they have righties on the schedule coming up, and for at least a couple of weeks, because they're talking mid-June for Winker, I think.
Yeah, so this would be a nice little run for Young to get him while you can, and ride it out, and ride him out as long as you can while Winker's out.
Him and Osuna both.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, let's speed along here for those who did not move from last to first in stolen bases thanks to Chandler Simpson, or those who did have Chandler Simpson but still need a little bit of a boost in the speed category. Who's out there that can help us steal some bases and score some runs?
Yeah, I mentioned Dane Myers earlier, being back in Miami. He's still 58% rostered in 15-teamers in the NFBC main event, but only 12% in the 12-team online championships. So he's available in almost half of 15-team leagues and almost all of 12-team leagues. He's got 7 stolen bases on the season. 5 of them came in the final 2 weeks before he hit the IL. He was really starting to turn it loose on the base paths. So I love Dane Myers back in Miami. Another guy returning that we will see versus right-handed pitching, and Cincinnati has 5 of 6 slated for this upcoming week, is Jake Fraley. He's even more available at 23% rostered in main events and only 2% in online championships. So a couple of good options that are available in even a lot of 15-team leagues this week.
Yeah, Jake Fraley just making his way back for Cincinnati as well. Left that out of the news section on purpose, knowing that we were going to bring him up. Needed to cut something. All right, well, we got some opportunities ahead of us. You mentioned a handful of teams that are going to have a 7-game work week. We've got, including in that list, the Chicago White Sox, Detroit, Minnesota, the Athletics, the New York Mets, the Dodgers, San Diego, and San Francisco. So a lot of West Coast games here happening all week long. Nobody, though, has a 5-game. And I was looking through the schedule for the remainder of the season, and I don't remember seeing such a stretch, especially in September during head-to-head playoff time. There's not a whole lot of 5-game work weeks. Like, there's not a lot of teams that have 2 days off in the week throughout the rest of the season, which I think is great. It definitely brings down, it changes the value of the 7-game week, because if there's not a big difference, but it's nice to know that you have a little bit more stability especially for your hitters throughout the course of the season.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and nobody has the 5-game work week this week. Colorado, Cincinnati, Tampa Bay, and Athletics we usually focus on. Colorado is away at Miami for 3, and then they host the Mets, as you mentioned earlier, for 3. Cincinnati will be hosting games all week long in Great America Small Park. 3 versus the Milwaukee Brewers and 3 against Arizona. So Arizona and Milwaukee get to take advantage of that. And then Tampa Bay will be hosting Texas and Miami throughout the course of the week. So we can take advantage of George Steinbrenner Field, and the Athletics will be in West Sacramento as they host the Minnesota Twins and the Baltimore Orioles for a 7-game work week for the Athletics. So with that, all that in mind, anything else, any other matchups, any other situations you might want to consider, Kevin? Who do you like to take advantage of next week's opportunities?
Yeah, this doesn't really have much to do with the schedule, but it has more to do with what has transpired over the past 3 weeks. I don't remember exactly when it was. It was about that long ago. I was listening to Rates and Barrels, and I heard Eno Saris talk about, or at least just mention that he thought Alexander Canario might finally be ready to do something. And so I started to dig in a little bit, and I didn't see it. He wasn't playing. He wasn't getting the playing time. Well, Eno is smarter than me, and that's about the time I heard that. I'm thinking about 3 weeks ago, and now for the past 3 weeks, Alexander Canario has been playing every day or near every day. About 6 on, 1 off is what we're seeing. Not only that, in spite of his 30% strikeout rate, which he's had all through the minors and at every opportunity he's had in Major League Baseball, in the minors, he could hit for average in spite of that strikeout rate. Very few people have we seen do that, and the ones that we have seen do it at the major league level, at some point, it falls off, right? Javier Baez, Adolis Garcia, we know that. But as of right now, Alexander Canario, over in this 3-week stretch, is hitting over 300 in spite of striking out 31.9% of the time. 2 home runs, 2 stolen bases, a 132 WRC plus over the past 3 weeks. If he's going to continue to get this playing time and continue to hit the ball as hard as he does, because he really should have more home runs than he has. He's got 13 barrels on the season. The number has gone down a little bit this year. You know, the ball changes, the weather, all this good stuff, but it's usually around half. I think it's down a couple percentage points, like 46% instead of 48% of barrels that have been home runs. So he should have 6, at least, 5 or 6 home runs rather than that 3. If we saw a guy in 72 plate appearances with 6 home runs rather than 3, we'd be all over him.
Sure.
So I think we should be. Anyway, I think we can get him cheap still now where he is available. He's only 1% rostered in 12s, but 67% in 15s. So in the 15-team leagues, people are taking notice of this. I think it's time to grab him in 12s and the 15s where he is available and see if he can continue this breakout. What appears to be, it could be the beginning of a breakout.
Yeah, at the very least, even if it's not a true breakout where he comes back down to earth, you ride it. You ride it, right?
Ride him while it's hot. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So if he doesn't have to, you don't have to spend a whole lot of money on him. You could feel a lot more comfortable riding it along, as wherever he takes you. All right. Well, we've got some pitching categories to get to as well. Wins, Ks, ratios, saves, all that good stuff. And we're going to do that after this break. All right, Kevin, no more waiting around. We need some wins and Ks, and we need them probably from our starters. But you already said at the beginning of the show that there's not a whole lot, that you usually have a nice long list of players to be considering. Your list is not very long on this one, unless you have some invisible ink here that I'm not seeing. But I still need somebody who might I be looking at that will be available? Sawyer Gibson Long not going to be one of them.
Yeah, unfortunately. And here's our problem. We have guys returning, right? Guys that were not dropped. So our pool of available pitchers just got smaller. That I think that's what's happening, right? Brandon Woodruff is already rostered. Some of these guys we talked about. So that hurts. And then on top of that, just the way the matchups line up this week, every team that I like to target for matchups, they're facing teams whose rotations are already rostered.
Taken, yep.
All of them. So it's just one of those weeks. So I think in 15s, the Knicks category is where I'm, as I mentioned earlier in the show, is where I'm going for pitching. I'm going to be looking at relievers and try to get lucky and protect my ratios and hopefully stumble into a win or a save that way. But in 12-team leagues, this surprised me because he's 100% rostered in 15s. But Lance McCullers Jr. is only 11% rostered in 12s. I know he could get injured again at any moment. He's prone to have a blow up outing now and then, but he did just have a 12 strikeout performance, which wins and strikeouts is what we're looking for here. And he gets a 2-step this week at Pitt. Love that. At Cleveland, don't hate that. Lance McCullers Jr. I'd say should be 100% rostered in those 12s for that 2-step this week, where he's available in 89% of leagues.
Yeah, I like it. I don't necessarily trust Lance McCullers in most cases, but obviously with his last outing and then facing the Pirates on it and in his next outing, it's something you've got to take notice and take advantage of, and hopefully he can as well. All right, well, ratio categories is going to be the focus, Kevin. I know you love, and I did the same thing last week, and I'm going to continue to do it each and every week. Going to lean on Rick Graham's saves and holds, exactly, since it is also the title article at Pitcher List right now while we're recording this. It was really easy to find. Where any names on that list or any other names that you might be targeting for the ratios category?
Yeah, absolutely. One guy that like every one of these lists at Pitcher List at the beginning of the article, it says read the notes, right? So I do. I take that to heart, and I do. Yanier Cano in Baltimore. Rick is talking about 3 solid outings in a row now, and even when the results weren't good, the stuff was great. A 5.30 PLV, which is 93rd percentile amongst relievers. So the stuff was there. He wasn't getting results. Now, over his past few outings, he has begun getting results. One guy that you've brought up a couple of times this season skyrocketed up Rick's list a couple of weeks ago, and he's still in the top 10. Abner Uribe has a lot of availability now that goodness, I'm drawing a blank. What's the closer's name in Milwaukee?
McGill. Yeah, Trevor McGill.
Yeah, Trevor McGill has settled back down.
Yes.
So the places where Uribe was picked up, he's been dropped again in a lot of those. Randy Rodriguez, we talked about a month ago, and he's continued to be really, really good in San Francisco. He's got Ben Kasparius on here. I don't know if he's been dropped yet from when he was picked up for his spot starts, but he will be this weekend or next weekend if he hasn't been yet, and then he will be great in this category. And who knows, if the Dodgers need a spot starter, then you already have him next time they use him for that. Like I've said every week, of course, there's some of these guys at the top of his holds list that have a pretty high rostership due to speculation for saves. Griffin Jacks, Jeremiah Estrada, Cade Smith, Brian Abreu, these guys, but they're available in a lot of leagues. So, yep, the guys that have, luckily we don't have to worry about the 5-game weeks like you brought up, so it's not as big a deal. But I do look at the teams with 7-game weeks first when I'm picking guys off this list. That's just another chance for another inning or two. But yeah, this is how I do it every week, when especially when there's the situation like we have this week, where there's just not anybody available where I'm fond of the matchup as far as starters go. This is where I go.
Yeah, I mean, this is we've been talking about this for the last couple of years. It's just, this is the time you can take advantage of these types of players, and you can usually get them on the pretty cheap, and you feel a lot more comfortable with them. One of the names that stood out to me that kind of toes the line between this category and the next category is Robert Stevenson. Came back from the IL for the Angels, looked great in his debut. Of course, the Angels have Kenley Jansen already locked in, but he hasn't looked that great. And we all expect the Angels to make a move of Jansen not being on the Angels after the trade deadline, or maybe even sooner than that. Though we've all expected this from the Angels in the past, and they have disappointed, and sometimes even waited until after the trade deadline to just like DFA all of their players at the same time. They haven't done that in a couple of years, but I'm not going to put it past them. They actually might have changed the rules. I don't think they're allowed to do something like that anymore. But Stevenson, regardless, fits into, at least currently, into this ratio category. He was the man that they paid first from Tampa before he got hurt. Got to expect that if he is looking and actually being as good as he was in his debut, that you have no problem throwing him into, regular 7th, 8th inning instances, high leverage situations where it matters most. So even though he is coming back from the injury, I do expect to see decent usage out of him moving forward. And man, I mean, the guy's just electric.
Yeah, and Jansen hasn't had a clean inning in his last 6 appearances. Yeah. I guess that might actually, because of the other point you brought up, which is great, right? We expect Jansen to get moved. So the lackluster performance from Jansen over the past couple of weeks may actually hurt, because it may be harder for them to trade him right now. But I do think we see Stevenson in the closer role by the end of the year.
Yeah. So again, I focus on this a lot because I do play in some head-to-head leagues, but you got to look at your August and September situations in those types of leagues because that's where it matters. The stretch and the playoffs matter the most. Got to get there first, though. All right. Well, anything else in the saves category? I mean, the leader of Rick's saves and holds article is Robert Garcia in Texas. A very common draftee during draft season, as the closer situation in Texas was in limbo pretty much from the start. Jackson not being the one that is working out. Garcia has gotten the last couple save opportunities and converted. He's had some hiccups of his own as well, and he is a lefty, but they have plenty of lefties in that bullpen. If you listen to Rick and Jake in the Pen podcast this week, they'll talk about how Bruce Bochy has said that they'd rather have a righty as the closer, though they have plenty of lefty options in Texas. So I do think that this is Garcia's job for the foreseeable future. It's just a matter of, if you believe the rumors of, the initial rumors of John Gray being considered to be a closer, if and when he returns from injury, the very slight rumors of Kumar Rocker being.
Oh, those got squashed in a hurry.
Oh yeah, that's a very slight.
The team came right out and said, "We have not even discussed that." If you believe them,
you gotta believe something, I guess. But yeah, I mean, it really seems like as though it'll be the same thing as Jackson was like. Garcia just he gets to do what he needs to do until he loses, until he proves otherwise. So where available, I actually don't know where he's available, but he's where available, he's going to be a big bid this week. Easy.
Double check on Duvall as well. I think he's rostered in most leagues because we've seen this coming for 2 or 3 weeks now, but it's worth double checking now that we know.
Yep. Yeah, good call out there. And then I called out Brandon Little as well last week in Toronto in the ratio category, but Hoffman, if they ever made a change with Yimi Garcia now being hurt as well, this could be, Little's opportunity to jump into that spot in the saves category. But he's still somebody that you can roster in the ratio category either way. All right, Kevin, of course, I'm happy. I skipped it last week. I realized this after the fact. There was no wild card section last week, so help me out here. My wild card was Sawyer Gibson-Long. Obviously, we already talked about how he's not going to be available in the NFBC formats, but if you can still stash him in your IL leagues or in leagues where you don't have those restrictions, nice to grab him now and, see how it works out in his debut. Who else?
My guy's not going to be available in NFBC yet either. Unfortunately.
But still a name to watch out for.
But it's kind of funny. I told you before we started recording that a keeper league that I'm in had been really active this week with trades and such. And I was able to acquire Yuri Perez. And if you've seen any of the posts and videos of his last couple of minor league outings where he's up to 4 innings now in his last 2 starts, he looks electric. One of the posts I read was comparing him. They haven't seen anybody look like this since Jose Fernandez, and that blew my mind. So I was ecstatic, but the whole time I was trying to make this trade, I kept seeing more and more of these posts, and I was like, stop. Y'all stop. I'm trying to trade for this guy. But yeah, Yuri Perez is close. I think one more minor league start is what they're saying. So we'll see him in a couple of weeks. So it's probably at least 2 weeks before we can bid on him in NFBC. Mm-hmm. But if you've been saving your money, this might be where you want to spend it.
Yeah, I mean, there's always an off chance somebody in your league drafted him, hoping he'd be back earlier, and then they dropped. But yeah, most likely everybody knew.
I think if you made that draft pick, you have to have had like your first 6 round draft picks all have to be on your IL that you wouldn't drop, right? To still be on your roster.
No, that's the thing. That's a lot of people. There's plenty of people in the NFBC who love to do the strategy of I'm going to grab somebody in week 1. I'm going to drop them in week 2, and hopefully nobody notices. I'll notice it earlier because I made the pick, and maybe they were able to pick up Yuri Perez last week or this week in preparation when nobody was thinking he'd be available. Which is why it's always good to just use Control F, fill it in the search bar, whatever, and just check to make sure nobody else is trying to pull one over on you. Oh man. So there we go. Uncle Ted. There we go.
Here's my question for you, Adam. If you find a league where that is the case, how much are you bidding on him this week, knowing that at least one other manager in your league knows he's available?
Well, it's the thing is that hopefully I looked him up last week or right. And I already bid on him thinking that, there's at least another team in my league this week. And he's that close. Is he as close as you say he is? You probably still need to throw out, a $50, $60 bid.
That's exactly where I was at.
Regardless of where your budget is. because
That's where I was at.
That's where if they waited this long, they're probably going to bid that, they're probably hoping they can sneak them by at the last second.
They're hoping they're sneaking,
or
but
like
they're
the
going to cushion it a little bit. Yeah. Yep. That's about where I was at.
Uncle Ted said the same things happened in one of his leagues. Someone drafted Perez and they dropped him.
He scooped him up. Nice job, Uncle Ted.
Well done.
Yeah.
Cool.
And it's going to go up $80 a week the closer he gets.
Yeah.
More than that. Once he's available in all of the leagues, so we've 100%. Seen him. Probably it appears we're going to see him at Tampa next weekend, before Sunday. So he'd be available next week. If he looks good in that outing, this is percentage of what people have left is going to be the biggest bids of the year. Depending on how much people got left, maybe there's not enough for him to be the biggest dollar amount bid of the year, but he very well could be.
Yeah. All right. Well, man, that was a fun one. Kevin, welcome back, and just in time because I'm gonna pull a Jordan Lawler, and you're gonna come in, and I'm gonna leave. So next week, hopefully you have better luck getting somebody to fill in second chair, and you're not doing something solo. But
I will find somebody. I'm not going to talk by myself that way. I've done it in the past. It's fun. It's exhausting.
Oh yeah, and you just have to keep up with yourself.
Just keep talking.
And that's really what it is.
The chat helps. That's when absolutely. The chat is amazing. Yeah.
So thank everybody who has been chatting amongst yourselves, and I've been keeping one eye on it as well, making notes here, and just some great comments. People, I have been seeing, especially in my daily moves league, some interesting drops throughout the course of the season, especially in a 12-teamer. In a home dynasty league, you get really attached to the players when you've had them for a long time. And I have one team who finally dropped Marcus Semien, just because you can't roster him right now. But he's had him for a long time. I dropped Xander Bogaerts the other day. Again, in a 12-teamer, Christian Walker was dropped. Like, just some interesting drops in that league that I
dropped Zach Gallen in a couple of spots.
I've seen that happen. Yeah,
I was to the point last weekend. I think I might have dropped him 2 weeks ago in one, but last weekend he had a start against Pittsburgh this week. And I was like, I can't drop him now. And I'm like, but I'm not even going to start him against Pittsburgh. And if I can't do that, you got to go.
Yeah. That's a good litmus test right there.
Yeah. So yeah, I've seen quite a bit as well. And it's tough, but I really think there's always guys that turn it around. Somebody else picks them up, and it drives us nuts. But I think the more that we get comfortable making those moves, the better off we are.
Yeah, absolutely. It's addition by subtraction in most scenarios. So got to have the stomach to do it. But the strongest stomachs usually, get the job done at the end of the season.
It sounds crazy coming from the same guy that talks about picking up Kyle Hendricks and Patrick Corbin in the right matchups, and I'm dropping Zach Gallen, but it does make sense in my head.
Yeah, there you go. All right, guys. Well, that is going to wrap it up for episode 216 of On the Wire. Thank you so much for joining us. After all that, I am Adam Howe, and on behalf of Kevin Hasting, thanks for listening, and we bid you goodbye.